watch them fight and die in the name of freedom. They speak of liberty and justice.
The American Revolution becomes lost for many of the non-historically adept, with the existing dichotomy of American patriot versus British redcoat in popular culture. The neophyte is often bewildered by the terrifying brand of violent politics that so identifies the war on the frontiers of New York and Pennsylvania. From the Mohawk River Valley to the wilds of the Ohio country, the brutal raids executed by bands of militia and allied Indian warriors were the primary threat to Continental forces throughout the West. On August 11, 1779, Colonel Daniel Broadhead, the head of the Western Department, launched a campaign against an unconventional enemy in the wilderness of the Ohio country. After 35 days of long marching through terrible weather, the last of Western Seneca, or Mingo, culture lay in ruins. While the Broadhead Campaign has long been overshadowed by more notable northern operations led by Major General John Sullivan and Brigadier General James Clinton, lingering questions have made Broadhead's campaign a curious footnote in the larger narrative of the American Revolution. Amongst the most unique aspects of this campaign was the small yet fiery engagement that occurred some 8 days into the expedition, known as the Battle of Thompson Island. According to Broadhead's reports, his troops had only one small skirmish at the Battle of Thompson Island, where they defeated a small party of Senecas. Seneca oral history suggests that several of Broadhead's men were later killed in the Seneca towns of Upper Allegheny, but Broadhead failed to report such incidents. So what was Thompson Island? And what is the story behind this brief memorandum in the history books? Let's find out today on this episode of Exploring the American Frontier.
Hi, my name's Steve from Exploring the American Frontier.
Subscribe to my channel and don't get lost in history.
The event was one of the only Revolutionary War actions to take place in northwestern Pennsylvania, and the Upper Allegheny Islands today represent living history. Now protected as part of the National Wilderness Preservation System, Thomson's and 6 other islands remain much as they were when the Seneca people hunted and fished there. Here is the story as it's told. In 1779, the British Crown was attempting to put down the rebellion of its American colonies. The history of the American Revolution emphasizes former battles between the British and American armies, such as Brandywine and Yorktown. But west of the Alleghenies, a lesser-known war alternately took place, in which all sides, British loyalist, American, and native, sought to bring rampage and destruction on the other settlements and villages. Both British and Americans tried boldly to form allegiance with the powerful Iroquois League, a confederation of 6 native nations whose homeland reached across central New York into northwestern Pennsylvania. Alliance with native forces was a tremendous advantage in frontier warfare, as Washington had learned well enough through his French and Indian War service to the King of England 25 years earlier. When most Iroquois, including the westernmost Seneca, took the British side and began raiding frontier settlements, aided and encouraged by loyalist militia, Washington came up with a strategic response. He ordered General John Sullivan with 3,000 men to advance up the Susquehanna River, while General James Clinton, with a smaller force, struck west from New York's Mohawk Valley. Sullivan was to meet Clinton and, with their combined force, march west across the Iroquois heartland, burning the Indians' towns and destroying crops and stored provisions. The objective was to crush the Iroquois' will and ability to help the British oppose the American cause. By the spring of 1779, Colonel Broadhead, who had been with Washington at Valley Forge 2 winters before, had assumed command at Fort Pitt. His main concerns at Fort Pitt were the logistical challenge of provisioning a wilderness outpost and defending scattered Ohio country settlements from Indian attack. Initially, Washington's plans to send General Sullivan and Clinton against the eastern Iroquois' western component. Broadhead would lead whatever forces he could up the Allegheny to strike the Seneca, while also diverting Indian and Loyalist attention from Sullivan's progress. Washington's letters indicate he viewed Fort Pitt's commander as a capable officer, but Broadhead's correspondence suggests that, stationed at Fort Pitt, he felt underutilized in the war effort. He welcomed the assignment to lead an expedition against the Seneca, the most formidable branch of the Iroquois League. But in May, Washington changed his mind and canceled Broadhead's mission. Fearful that it would be difficult to maintain a supply line so far into enemy lands and that it would leave settlers around Fort Pitt exposed. Broadhead, though, was determined. He continued to gather recruits and supplies while exhorting Washington to authorize his campaign. In mid-July, Washington relented, informing Broadhead by letter of his consent to an expedition against the Mingos, or Seneca. Broadhead's modest army, assembled mostly from the 8th Pennsylvania and 9th Virginia militias, marched out of Fort Pitt on August 11, 1779. His report to Washington states that he commanded 605 rank and file, including militia and volunteers. The column headed north on foot, while its supplies were pulled upriver in boats beyond present-day Kittanning. From there, they marched north across the forested plateau that is now Clarion County to shortcut the westward bend the Allegheny takes below Tynesta, known then
as Goshkashonk.
At Tynesta, they crossed to the Allegheny's west bank and continued upstream toward a cluster of Seneca towns above Conewago, where Warren, Pennsylvania stands today. The battle. Somewhere near today's Tidiote, which is Iroquois for protrusion of land and now sits home to a borough in Warren County, Pennsylvania, Broadhead deployed an advance guard consisting of 15 white men, including the spies, and 8 Delaware Indians. Farther upriver, on August 18th or 19th, the paths of Broadhead's forward scouts crossed that of the Seneca's paddlers. Musket barrels flashed, and blood was drawn onto the land. That much, from all accounts, is known. Broadhead's report, dated September 16th, told Washington that his advance guard discovered between 30 and 40 warriors coming down the Allegheny River in 7 canoes. Broadhead then relates that the Indians immediately landed, took off their shirts, and prepared for action, and the advance guard immediately began to attack. followed by reference to his preparing the main body to receive the enemy, and then Broadhead's own move forward where, as he told Washington, he found the Seneca in retreat, leaving behind canoes, guns, shirts, blankets, blood trails from the wounded, and 5 dead. His force escaped far better. According to Broadhead's letter, only 2 of my men and 1 of the Delaware Indians were wounded, and so slightly that they are already recovered and fit for action. The return to Fort Pitt. Broadhead continued upriver, where he recalled that the troops seemed much mortified because we had no person to serve as a guide to the upper towns. The column followed signs of retreating Indians to the vicinity of where Salamanca, New York is today. After remaining on the ground 3 whole days, destroying the towns and cornfields, Broadhead turned his troops and marched back down the Allegheny. Bearing farther west on his return, Broadhead sent a detachment up French Creek when he reached Venango, which razed another abandoned Seneca town and destroyed more crops. After the army's main body had marched through 320 miles of western wilderness, while its flankers and detachments had covered as much as 406 miles, the expedition returned to Fort Pitt on September 14th without losing a single man or pack animal, according to Broadhead's statement. There is a second-hand written account of the encounter in the Revolutionary War memoirs of Blacksnake, a Seneca chief, who recorded it as told to him by Red Eyes, a Seneca who claimed to be present. Blacksnake relates there were about 10 of them, Senecas, together following downstream on the Allegheny River with bark canoes and hunting furs. Red Eyes and his comrades was down about 5 miles below Broken Straw. They had been camped out on the bank of the river. The Battle of Thompson Island, then, remains an intriguing, if poorly documented, and misunderstood event, marginal to the wider scope of the American Revolution. Still, it evokes compelling human struggles within this region, where 18th century war west of the settled coastal plain was brutal, complex, and capriciously nasty for all involved in the theater of the West. Well, thank you guys for checking out this video, and if you like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, and share with your friends and family. And as always, get out there and explore the American frontier. Thanks, guys.